logistics of the event, I would now like to introduce you to our first speaker, who is, as I mentioned, Cris Beswick. And Cris is an author, he's a speaker and strategic advisor on innovation. And for the last 10 years, he's been a successful entrepreneur, and he's regarded now as one of the UK's foremost thinkers on innovation. So Cris is going to assist us to understand how we can all innovate.
Good afternoon, HR practitioners. Typically these things are called keynote speeches. I want to slightly change that today and have what I call a keynote conversation. So I know we've got some Q&A time later on in the session after that you've heard from all three speakers. But if any of you have got any questions, shout out, stick your hands up, and I'll answer them as we go along. So Tim there mentioned the word value in his opening words there. And what I want to talk to you about today is how we rethink the whole value and the value that as HR practitioners you guys add and can add and are able to add in terms of your organization pursuing innovation. So I want to talk to you about how you as HR practitioners can inspire people and can drive engagement and engage people around your organization driving innovation. But I'm going to bring us back down to earth first. And here's a quote and some words from a book called Funky Business. It's by two very, very clever guys, much cleverer than I, Kjell Nordstrom and Jonas Ridderstraler. And what they depict there in those really simple words is an overview of the world that we now operate in. And their language is based around the concept of everything being similar. We fill our businesses and our companies, we employ the same people from the same backgrounds, doing the same jobs, competing for the same work and the same contracts. And dare I say it, for the same price, and I know price is a big focus and a big issue in your industry. Similar prices and similar quality. And innovation is the answer to trying to operate and differentiate and drive competitive advantage in a market such as that. Innovation's not the panacea, it's not going to solve all your problems, but what we have to absolutely agree on is that the world is changing, the pace of business is changing, and what we have to do as businesses is at the very least keep up with that pace of change. So here's what innovation should do and should deliver for us. Innovation is about doing and being different. It's about putting in place the right culture, the right processes, and the right approach to innovation so that we can stand in front of our customers and say, this is why we're different. This is why we stand out against our competitors. And innovation, above all else, gives us the tools and the ammunition to move away from having to have conversations purely about price. Because when you're different and you stand out, price becomes less of an issue. So, I'm going to tell you what that figure means in a moment. But although it's quite dark and I can see you now, there we go. How many of you in your organizations have got a business strategy? Hands up. So only 2 of your businesses have got a strategy. Seriously? 4? Wow. How many have we got? 40, 50 people? 3, 4, 5? So genuinely, your businesses don't have a growth strategy. You don't have a strategic plan for driving your businesses forward. Wow. Okay. How many of you, and you should get this one, how many have got a HR strategy? Wow. So the difficult question that I was leaving last, because I was hoping that there was going to be a lot more hands in the air there, was how many of you then have got an innovation strategy? That was fairly predicted after the last 2 questions. Let me ask you a different one. How many of you believe or know or have conversations in your organization about innovation being absolutely vital to the success of your organizations? Wow, a few more hands up, that's good. Okay. So several of you there, maybe 10, 15 of you have got your hands up saying, yes, we acknowledge and we know innovation is absolutely vital to the success of our organizations. But those same people didn't have their hands up when I asked if you had an innovation strategy. You cannot drive innovation throughout an organization, regardless of its size or complexity. You cannot drive innovation without a strategy. You cannot drive your organizations forward without a strategy. Accenture have just done a study recently where 93% of companies surveyed said innovation is absolutely vital to the future success of their organizations. I may have to go back to Accenture and question their figures now because 93% of you didn't put your hands up. In a similar survey, 40% of organizations said we actually have a robust, implemented innovation strategy that's in play in our businesses at the moment. That's a massive gap from organizations that say innovation's important to organizations that say we're actually doing something about it. So the first thing is when you go back to your organizations, you need to start having conversations about why you haven't got a strategic approach to something that you all know is vital to the success of your organizations. Here are two fairly famous examples of why innovation's absolutely key. Less than 7 or 8 years ago, both Blockbuster and Kodak were global businesses. Blockbuster had global sales of around $5 billion. Kodak, similarly valued at around $6 billion. In 2010, Blockbuster went bust. In 2012, despite being valued at nearly $6 billion, Kodak went bust. These are huge organizations with huge resources, huge abilities to innovate, and these guys and their industry and their sector were disrupted almost overnight. So the key thing is, go back to your organizations and start building a strategy for the future, because you cannot be complacent enough to think that your organization and your sector and your industry isn't just as open to disruption as the industry that these guys were in. And the reality is, as it says at the bottom, 21st century competitive advantage will be different than it has been in the past and than it is today. And we have to start building our organizations that are able to cope with that. Here's a great example of the technology market. 3 of the latest smartphones, and look how homogeneous they are, look how similar they are. If we take the brands off, do we actually even know whose is whose anymore? The irony is, the Apple phone's the only one there without a logo on, but we all know which one that is, right? So here's what's happened over the last 100 years, right? The industrial age kicked off, and businesses were focused around product, around manufacturing. And then more recently, over the last sort of 40, 50 years, services and information have come to the fore, all aided by technology. The downside is competing on product or service in the market that we operate today and the market that we're going to start operating in the future is almost impossible. The product and service that you guys either sell or supply or provide is easily copied by all your competitors, and you are competitors in this very room. It's easy to copy product or service now. Our access to technology, to manufacturing, to materials, to processes, we have global access to that all, and we all have access to it. So where do we start to derive differentiation? Where do we start to look to innovate if innovation in product or service is getting more difficult? And my prediction and my advice is to start innovating around experiences. Start getting your businesses used to innovating around the people that work in your organizations. And that's why, as HR practitioners, you are absolutely in the driving seat if your organizations are going to start innovating around experiences, because experiences are about people. And fundamentally, innovation is about people. It's driven by people and their contribution. And as HR practitioners, you need to start understanding and reassessing how valuable your contribution to innovation is. The difference between product and service and experiences is it transforms your focus as a business from what you do to how you do it. And that, for me, is untapped at the moment in terms of innovation. Here's a great example of a brand that's known the experience has far more value than people take credit for. Lexus for years have known that they can't compete with Mercedes on the product alone. So they've built their business and they've built their differentiation around ownership and experience and what it actually means to own a product from their brand. What's the experience like as a customer? And we need to learn lessons from industries and sectors and businesses outside our own if we're going to start to do things differently. Apple's another famous example. Their whole business, despite the beautifully designed products, is actually about an experience. It's about innovating in terms of what's it actually like to own and use one of our products. And then they've been really clever and they've added this bit in. iTunes and connectivity and a systematic approach to pulling all those products together. That's what we love about Apple. We love the whole, the synchronization of all the products. And no other brand's really got that yet. So the lesson to take away from this is, don't just focus your innovation purely on product or service. Start to look at innovation in a systematic way. How can you pull things together? How can you combine different parts of your business so that you can do things differently? The original iPhone in 2006 had no new technology inside it. All Apple did was pull together existing technology and package it in a really clever way. So the other lesson is innovation isn't always about technology. You don't have to reinvent the next microchip or reinvent the wheel. Sometimes it's about taking what already exists and putting it together in a different way. This is what we love about Apple, how they make us feel. How many other brands and how many other products will people camp outside in the cold and rain for weeks and weeks on end so that they're at the front of the queue? Yeah? Imagine what it would be like if your brands could attract the same type of experience from customers. Yeah? We need to learn from how the world's most innovative organizations do things. And even if we just take little essences and tiny little bits from how other people do things and see where we can inject them into our organizations, that's how we start to do things differently. Benchmarking what you do against each other won't really get you anywhere, and it certainly won't allow you to innovate. There's three things that I spend a lot of time with organizations on, and it's something that I call how we build the next generation organization. And the three things are this: insight, collaboration, and agility. And the first things that organizations need to get better at is increasing their focus on insight. So you guys are going to have to look at what you can do as HR practitioners to help drive insight into the organization. What do your people need to learn? What tools do they need? What processes do they need? What do you need to teach them in order to drive deeper and more valuable insight into the organization? Because without that, you can't innovate, you can't understand what problems are, you can't come up with creative solutions for them. And the second thing is, how do you teach your people how to collaborate more, both internally and externally? And dare I say it, sometimes even with competitors. I know that's a horrible thought, but look at the car industry, for example. The automotive manufacturing industry collaborates with competitors. You have different brands like Peugeot and Citroën, and Nissan, even with brands that it owns itself. Shared platforms, shared manufacturing, shared drivetrains. They collaborate in terms of development and manufacturing, even with competitors, because the end result is worth it. And what you really need to get better at links to insight, and that's how you collaborate with your customers. How you build the ability to co-create solutions and solve problems that your customers present you with. And the final thing is agility. And how you build your organizations and how you teach your people and your managers and how you structure your organizations to be much more agile, to be able to react in different ways, because things are on the horizon that we can't even see yet. 10, 20, 30 years ago, business moved at a slower pace. We could see things on the horizon, and if we wanted to and we were bothered enough, we could move our businesses to react to it. That horizon is tomorrow in the world that we now operate in. Things come up on us at an incredible pace, and we need to build our businesses and teach our people and coach them and train them and develop them so that they can help us become more agile as organizations. The red thread that runs through all of those is then innovation, and how we use all those techniques and those three focuses to drive innovation through our businesses. So I'm going to quickly share with you three areas of focus, three things that I think HR, apart from one of them, doesn't really, take on board that it can really help drive through organizations. You all know the typical things, the business as usual stuff that you do as HR practitioners. I want to talk to you about different things that you guys can start contributing to, different ways that you can add value to innovation in your organizations. And the first one's purpose. We don't get collaboration and commitment and contribution in terms of creativity and innovation from our employees and from people across our organizations when we say, our mission is to grow from $1 billion to $2 billion, and we're going to increase our EBIT by 7%. Yeah? Keep that stuff in the boardroom between the CEO and your investors and your board. That doesn't inspire people at the front line of a business to contribute to innovation. We need to create a different purpose, something that will inspire people to contribute to innovation. We need to think big if we're going to look at innovation, and we need, dare I say it, to sometimes be prepared to think in really radical, game-changing ways. Virgin Galactic's a great example of someone saying, you know what, I've got a vision, I think we can do something, and in the face of all the experts telling me it's not possible, I genuinely believe we can do it. And lo and behold, in the very, very near future, the first paying customers will take their flight into space. So we have to be prepared to say, here's what I believe, here's my vision, here are my values, and I'm going to innovate in line with those. The downside is, and the word of warning, is when you innovate around values and those values are skewed towards you, not the customer, you end up in a situation like Ryanair. None of us can deny that Ryanair have done some really cool, really innovative stuff in terms of how their business operates. The problem is that it's now starting to bite Ryanair back. Despite all that innovation, Ryanair has now just been voted the worst brand in the UK for customer experience. So, innovate in line with your values and your vision and the purpose by which your organization exists, but make sure that it's for the customer's benefit and it's really aligned with delivering a truly exceptional service to your customers. So radical innovation's great, right? We all want to create our version of Virgin Galactic and change the world and put a ding in the universe and all those, great, wonderful things. The reality is, we can't drive our businesses forward off the back of radical innovation. It takes time, it takes money, it takes resources, it takes big bets, and I know I'm going to use this word and you're all uncomfortable with it, but it means quite a big bit of risk as well, and that's something you guys don't like, right? But we still have to consider it, because radical innovation might actually be something that saves our neck in the future. We need to get comfortable and get used to thinking, what's next? What could we do? What does the future hold? What if our business actually goes out of business in 5 years? How do we prepare for that? What scenarios, could possibly come true? What happens if we end up being the next Blockbuster or Kodak? So how do we put ourselves out of business? The other reality is, right at the other end of the scale, there's incremental innovation. And the reality about incremental innovation is virtually every business in this room will already be doing it, you just don't talk about it. You'll be doing continuous improvement and lean and efficiency programs and tweaks. All that work and all that effort around just tweaking things, making things better, just improving processes, doing little bits of thing that on a daily basis makes the business a little bit better or a bit more efficient. Well, lo and behold, guess what? You are all already innovating. That is incremental innovation. Tweaking and improving and changing and modifying the stuff that you do on a daily basis. What's happening in the business today, and how do we tweak it? How do we get better? How do we improve it? The trick is what I call the innovation mix. And that's to mix and have a strategy for activity that crosses those three innovation areas. You're never going to push your business forward purely focusing on radical innovation because it's too far away and it's too big. And purely focusing on incremental innovation only in most cases means that you improve stuff inside the business, internally. So you have to use your own language and create something that fills the gap. And steal mine if you want, I call it differentiated innovation. And differentiated innovation says, what will make us unique? How can we be perceived and how can we deliver things and do things in a really different way? And the trick here is use incremental innovation to improve things inside the business, and use differentiated innovation to improve things outside the business, so customer focused. And the tip is you need to have a mix of activities. It's the venture capital approach. You spread the bet and you have a mix of activities across all of those three, and some of them will pay off. So here's a quote from Steve Ridgway, who's the former CEO at Virgin Atlantic. And he said, "We fly exactly the same planes as everybody else. We fly them under the same very strict safety rules. Yet if you go on one of our planes and experience the service, you'll see it's very different from many others." They fundamentally understand that the experience is far more powerful than the product or service that they provide, because that's where they can differentiate. All the other airlines can say, yeah, but we fly an A380 or whatever it is. We've got 12,000 inches of leg room. We do X, we do Y. Any one of you and any one of your businesses can copy those tangible things. What's really difficult to copy is how the customer experiences your brand and how your people deliver that experience. That's unique to your business, and it's unique to the culture by which your business operates. Steve Jobs famously once said, start with the experience and work your way back to the technology. Work your way back to the solution that's going to provide that experience. And he was dead right. So here's a scenario. You're pitching for some work, and this has probably been happening over the past couple of days, hundreds and hundreds of times in the exhibition hall and across these meeting points. You're pitching for some work, and the client says, okay, but I've just had a pitch from your next nearest competitor, and the scope of work's the same, the contract length's the same, you've both informed me that you're going to lease exactly the same equipment from the same supplier, so why are you any different? What makes you unique? And unless you want to continue having the conversation around price, you need to start innovating around the question of, okay, what will make us unique? What extra things can we do that move the conversation away from price? What extra things can we do that really differentiate us that our competitors aren't doing? And how do we innovate in that space? The second thing I want to talk to you about is insight, and how you as HR people and practitioners and HR directors can really help drive insight throughout the business. And the reality is, most certainly with incremental innovation, that insight comes from the people at the forefront of the business, the people on the ground doing the work, doing stuff. They notice issues, they notice areas where things can be improved. They're the ones where a problem occurs and they maybe have to solve it. And that's where you want to really drive insight from in the business. Yes, you've got to look at the horizon, you've got to look at trends, you've got to look at what's going to happen in the future. But you can put strategies around that. You can outsource things like that. What you can't compensate for is how much insight you can get from the people in your organization, the people who are faced with the challenges on a daily basis. Here's another quote from Curtis Kopp from Alaska Airlines. And he says, "Be bold," and think about these words as HR practitioners. Be bold and challenge the status quo in your industry. You need to learn to walk in the customer's shoes, talk to them, and make focusing on the customer experience your top priority. Think back to Steve Jobs' words. Focus on the experience and work your way back to the technology. If you take technology out of the equation, focus on the experience and work your way back to the best, most differentiated solution. And as HR practitioners, part of your job is to help everyone in your organization drive insight. These guys have just been voted the second most innovative organization in the world, second only to Nike. Now, Jeff Bezos' quote there, the reality is, as you've just heard, you'll have figured out he stole it from Steve Jobs. But so what? Leaders start with the customer and work backwards. Maybe that's a better way, a better phrase for you guys to use, because it doesn't use the word technology. Yeah? But these guys are absolutely leading the way in terms of innovation. So although I've said before, innovation isn't purely about technology, and you don't have to reinvent new technology or create some new technology in terms of innovation. Innovation can be about product, service, brand, efficiency, marketing, your organizational makeup. It can be about every facet of your organization. One of the realities about technology is it helps us innovate. And it's a really good tool. And things like this is a company called Spigot, and there's many others, but these are online collaboration platforms. So it's the Facebook or the LinkedIn for innovation. It allows every person in an organization to collaborate, to share ideas, to solve problems, to co-create solutions, to innovate. Technology is a great enabler of innovation where you've got lots of employees in diverse workplaces. It's a great tool to bring people's idea sharing and collaboration together. So technology doesn't have to be about innovation, or innovation doesn't have to be technology-based, but technology is a great enabler of innovation. And here's a cute little photo just to cheer you all up. Don't worry, the baby survived, it didn't die. Several years ago, Great Ormond Street Children's Hospital in London were facing a real challenge with transferring newly born, acutely ill babies that had had surgery and needed to be transported from the operating theatre onto life support machines and incubators. So think about the risk, think about the analogy there for your business and the amount of risk involved in that quite short but complicated transfer process. And the error rates and technical errors and issues that cropped up were just too high for the senior team to really live with. So where do you think they looked for solutions to help solve that problem? Anyone guess? Does anyone know the answer? I'll put you out of your misery then. They looked here. Crazy, right? What the hell's Ferrari F1 pit crew team got to do with transferring babies from operating theatres to incubators? But look at and focus on the word analogy. Look at the analogy. The patient can't move, totally immobile, it can't communicate, can't help you, can't do anything. A very short window, a very complicated procedure, has to be done in order, has to be done acutely, precisely, with zero or minimal errors. The analogy and the parameters are exactly the same. So McLaren and Ferrari worked together and developed a transfer process, a really innovative approach for how the Great Ormond Street team transferred babies from those two positions. And it reduced incident rates overnight by 50%. So when you have similar things going on in your industry and on the ground and on the runway and wherever things are happening, look for really creative, different, innovative ways outside of your industry. Look for analogies. Look for similarities of other people that have solved the same or similar challenges and see what you can learn from them and bring back into your organization. That's how you start to do innovative and creative things. The third one is something that you are absolutely in the driving seat of. HR people in businesses are right in the driving seat of helping drive and change and develop culture. And the reality is innovation is all about culture. Performance, excellence, customer experience is all derived from culture because it's all derived from the performance and the service that your people give. And there's a really good lesson here from your industry about the value of getting culture right and wrong. Does anyone know what happened? And one of the main contributing factors to Song not really working? No? So Song was created to compete with JetBlue. The problem is JetBlue's culture was purely focused around exactly what it provided. Song's culture was a byproduct and was part of its parent company, part of Delta. And that culture wasn't agile enough and wasn't creative enough and just wasn't able to operate in a way that allowed Song to compete with JetBlue. So it's not the only factor, why it didn't work, but it's a huge contributor to why Song didn't work. Culture is absolutely vital, and it's absolutely vital for innovation. So I spoke earlier on in the year at a conference around customer excellence. And this tweet is from one of my fellow speakers at the conference. He's an American guy, an absolutely amazing guy on customer experience and customer excellence. And his comment is absolutely perfect. It's right on the button in terms of culture. Behind every great customer experience is a great employee experience. If we do not build the right culture in our organizations, forget innovation. It's as simple as that. If I don't want to come to work, if I don't enjoy it, if I'm not really bothered about the organization, why am I going to willingly contribute creativity and ideas and different solutions? Why am I even going to waste my time doing that if I'm not absolutely switched on about coming to work? And I know it's difficult, and I know it's particularly difficult in your industry, but we just got to get over it. We've got to find creative ways of building the right culture, of engaging and inspiring people to really want to contribute to innovation. I'm not saying it's easy, and I'm not saying I've got the answers, but we have to take that on as HR people as one of our main challenges. So here's another quote from Pernod Ricard, one of the most innovative companies in the world. And here's what they say about their culture. We encourage initiative, autonomy. We reward risk-taking. We don't chastise it. We recognize the right to make a mistake. So we recognize that for innovation, things might and will go wrong. Yeah? Whereas most companies chastise innovation, chastise mistakes. And that's just a massive barrier to innovation. We've created a motivating, respectful working environment. We encourage individual and collective commitment, and that accelerates performance. Our management style is based on a culture of innovation, and it inspires and motivates our employees. Look at the language used in there, and how many of you can say, yeah, we do that, and we do that, and we do that, and we do that. Not many of you, right? So look at the language in that statement from Pernod and think, as HR practitioners, what have I got to do, and what do we need to change, and what do we need to do differently to start being able to, hand on heart, use some of that language? Because it's that stuff that drives innovation. It's that stuff that builds high-performance cultures. Virgin's values. fun, entertainment, irreverence, and innovation. So I'd ask you to be really careful and be really clever about the values that you actually use in your organization. Most organizations I go and say, yeah, Chris, we've got great values. Here's the vision, and the values have been created by the 4 guys on the board or in the leadership team, and it's 4 words that just sort of sound cool. Yeah? The values tend to be there because they're sort of what we should be doing and they sound right. The values that you use in your organization should be used to drive innovation. So you innovate around those values. So make sure that they're right. Be absolutely sincere about the values used in your organization, or don't have any at all. So who's seen Virgin's new flight safety video? One person at the back. Anyone else? So we're all guilty, right? We're all in an industry where we get on a plane and the thing comes over the thing. We know you're all frequent flyers, and we know you all know what to do in the event of an emergency. The reality is, no, they don't, because we'd probably all panic. But we know what we know you know what to do. You're all frequent flyers. But if you could just spare us a few minutes and read the safety card on the seat back, or just give the air hostess at the front of the cabin a bit of your attention. Who does it, right? We're all guilty. It's our industry. We should be setting a precedence, and we don't do it because we all think we know. So one of the things is, how does someone like Virgin try and engage people, and how do they do something different to impart that information? Because it's got to be imparted. So when you finish here, or tonight, or tomorrow, log on to the Wi-Fi and Google their new in-flight safety briefing. And what Virgin have done is they've taken their values and said, how do we innovate in terms of that in-flight safety briefing using our core values? How do we make it fun? How do we make it entertaining? How do we do something really innovative? And to put you out of your misery, they've made a film and a music video to convey that safety briefing. It's absolutely superb, and why anyone hasn't done it before, I don't know. But these are the things that you get when you innovate around your core values. One of the main things you can control and you're responsible for in your organizations, and you do have leverage over, are the things that are barriers, that are inhibitors, but also the things that are drivers of innovation. So you're going to need to start looking at policies, at procedures, at management style, sign-off limits, hierarchy, processes, procedures, every facet of your business that could either drive or impede or inhibit innovation. And you have to be prepared to redesign and change whatever it is, policies, procedures. Yeah? You'll be surprised at where barriers to innovation sit in your organization. You have to dig them out and you have to change them. One of the big things that's prevalent in your industry is risk. So who knows who Edward de Bono is? No? So Edward de Bono is hailed as the world's greatest thinker, or the world's leading expert on creative thinking and creativity. And in an interview recently, he was asked why people in businesses don't take risk or are afraid to take risk. And he said this, he said, the problem is that the English language doesn't have a word for a fully justified and considered venture which for reasons beyond our control just doesn't succeed, other than to call it a mistake. And who wants to make mistakes, right? So the very language that we use doesn't even give people the ability to say, well, I didn't make a mistake, I made an X. Yeah? So I called it, this is the world's greatest creative thinker, right? And he says, look, there's no word for this, so why the hell he didn't come up with it, I don't know. He's supposed to be the clever one, right? The creative one. So I took a few letters and I threw them together in a creative way. And the word is juvendeseed. And it's a bit tongue-in-cheek, it's a bit daft, but the point is, if you don't want to use that one, create another word or create another scenario in your organization where when people take some risk, but they've done absolutely everything. They've done the due diligence, they've sense-checked it with their team, They've got sign-off from senior management. Everyone collaborates, says, yeah, we can't see any reason why this won't work. Let's do it. And you know what? Just something comes up. Something crops up out of the blue and it doesn't work. That's the risk that we want people taking. That's what I call smart risk. Cavalier risk is the thing that you then say, that's a mistake. Cavalier risk is when you don't cross T's and dot I's enough and you still go ahead and do it. What we need to build in organizations is the ability to take more smart risk. But also, when things go wrong, how do we learn from it? What's the, I call it what's the learning episode? What do we actually derive from it? Because yes, it's gone wrong, but that means there's something to learn. And we need to completely change the language in our approach to risk in organizations. So here's a really clever way of getting people to take some risk. This is a guy called Jim Donald, and he's ex-Starbucks, and he moved to an organization in America called Extended Stay America. It's a hotel chain. And when he was brought on board, the business is on its knees, and his job was to turn it around. And what he noticed was this. When he says they, he was talking about the people, everyone in the business. And the parallels to your organization are the same in terms of the type of people that work there, the salary that they're on, the working hours, the conditions, etc. And he said they were waiting to be told what to do. They were afraid to do things. Now he needed these people, he needed to inspire them and engage them to start doing things differently. Not necessarily to start taking risk, but to start doing things that they weren't doing at the moment. Whether that's trying to improve something, or changing the way that a part of their business operated, or changing the way that they interact with a customer. Maybe in trying to improve, having an idea around improving that customer experience. So he looked at the Monopoly board and he said, I know what, I'm going to issue them get out of jail free cards. On the caveat that when I issue them, they have to use them. So he had them printed and he sent them out to every employee. And he said, do something different, take a bit of risk, chop and change things, what you're doing. If you've got a good idea, do it. And if it goes wrong, guess what? It won't be a mistake, it'll be a due vendor seed. Yeah, we'll learn from it. But here's your get out of jail free card. You're not going to lose your job. You're not going to be chastised. We're going to find out and we're going to extrapolate what you've learned from it and why it went wrong. But there's the get out of jail free card. And guess what? Check out Extended Stay America now. Check out the culture. And check out how they're performing as a business. It's completely turned around. So there are really simple, nice little creative ways that we can try and drive engagement. We can inspire people to behave differently. And fundamentally, everything that you guys do as HR practitioners is about driving the right behavior in people that will get your organization to where you want and need it to be. So hands up all the men in the audience who know what that is. So, the guy at the back there, he's honest, so I like him, he's cool. What I'm really concerned about is that lady put her hand up, and I said, hands up all the men in the audience who know what that is. But we won't go there. So, you all know what that is, right? So, hands up all the men in the audience that have used one. Yeah, I bet you have, you just don't want to put your hands up now. So, who knows how Viagra was created? Who knows why Viagra exists? Anyone? So several years ago, in a clinical trial, Viagra was being distributed to young, nubile gentlemen, probably all students, so they needed the cash right, and they'll do anything, guinea pigs for money. And Viagra was being given to them to test what Pfizer thought was a new drug to combat heart disease and high blood pressure. And I'm sensing you're quite a polite audience, so I won't use the word that I normally use, and I'll use the word, as they found, all the young men were walking around stimulated. And lo and behold, Pfizer discovered, purely by, and here's the key word, serendipity. They discovered one of the world's most successful drugs, purely by accident. The moral is, when you're doing stuff, when you've got a focus on innovation, when you've got the right culture, when you're experimenting, when you're trying new things, even if you don't actually get what you're setting out to get, sometimes the byproduct gives you something miraculous, like Viagra. But the point is, if you're not doing anything, you won't get anything. So what I want you to do is take away, even if you just take away a few snippets, a few little bits of what I've talked to you about today, and think, how can I actually, as a HR practitioner, how can I just start doing things a little bit differently? How can I inject a bit of that into my organization? How can I start to work around where innovation can fit into our culture, into our organization? And lo and behold, it'll gain traction and it'll bubble to the surface, and you'll have inspired, you'll have engaged, and you'll have driven innovation. So 2 final words from me. Thank you. Actually, that's 4. Thank you. And most importantly, good luck.
Thank you, Chris. Well,